Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and I'm very excited to have Vasundhra Gupta with us today. Vasundhra is a spiritual educator, author, and consciousness coach. She's passionate about simplifying spirituality in a way where everyone can embody a more enlightened way of being. She reaches the world through her website called My Spiritual Shenanigans, a sacred space dedicated to raising the consciousness of the collective. Vasundhra, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is wonderful.
I'm very grateful that you took me up on the invitation to be on this podcast because I'm sure you hadn't heard of the show before. And I hadn't heard of you prior to just doing some Google searching. I was looking for information on soul contracts. And there you were, highly ranked with your My Spiritual Shenanigans blog with a fantastic article all about soul contracts. And I'm guessing that's one article that probably gets a lot of visibility on your site because of the high Google rankings and the keen interest by people in that topic.
It absolutely does. And I've noticed that a lot of people are waking up to this idea that we've been destined to meet each other and that we have lessons for each other. So it's been fascinating to see the number of people that search soul contracts or blueprint or all of that. And then they want to connect over that conversation and be like, tell me more. So it's been a game changer for me in my journey for sure. And it's so amazing to see that it helps other people.
Yeah. Now let's talk about how come to terms with these two different ideas that one, you have free will, that it's a blank slate, the world's your oyster, whatever expression you want to use, that you can just go out there and do whatever you want, just randomly choose to turn right instead of left today and when you go to work, whatever. And yet, how can we have soul contracts where you're destined, preordained to meet somebody who will become your soulmate in this lifetime, or who will become your business partner, or somebody that you have a soul that you have an agreement with that they will become your child. And so they're not even born yet. Decades later, you have a child, and that was somebody that you had an agreement, a soul contract with, that they were going to be your child in this lifetime and you were going to be the parent.
That is such a heavy question and such a great one. But I think it's important to address this because we as the human being function on autopilot. For most parts, our biology has been designed so that, let's say, if the first time you learned how to open the handle of a door, you don't have to remember how to do it consciously every single time. That's going to be very slowing for our system. It's a part of evolution to know how to do these simple tasks, but also part of autopilot is being on autopilot in life, where you get into the same arguments over and over again, or you tend to attract the same kind of people that are not of service to you. What happens here is it's an invitation for us to wake up from the ways that we're used to being, because we finally see, this is outdated. This conditioning isn't serving me anymore. Sure, it was fine at the moment, but now I need to change. That change is our free will. Now, if you have had a relationship which has just shown up in different people, but it's the same kind of feeling every single time, there must have been a point where you gave up and you're like, you know what? I don't know what's happening. I have to question this. That's the free will. It's not that the universe is playing games with you. It's not that it hates you, but there's something in it for us to learn. And when we learn it, it just becomes easier. You become lighter. You evolve from it.
Right.
But if you don't, does anything happen? No, it just becomes very miserable. So that's where we are destined to meet certain people. They will support us with those lessons, but we get to choose whether or not we take it on as a lesson or we just cry about it, become a victim, and all of that.
So if you're kind of going through life on autopilot, I'm being hypothetical here. I'm not saying you, the listener, or anybody. I'm just saying if somebody is going through life on autopilot, they tend to repeat the same patterns. They end up in similarly dysfunctional relationships, for example. And it's because there's a lesson that they need to learn that they haven't learned yet. And those could be soul contracts that were preordained to be part of your lifetime until you decide to wake up. If you make that decision, if you decide to keep doing the same thing, I love this quote from Mark Twain, and it's something like this: "History doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes." And so going through these same patterns, these same loops, will maybe seem different, but they're not. In many respects, the lesson is still there for you to take if you so choose. And so if we're utilizing our free will to perhaps even kind of jump timelines, or to be a higher vibration version of ourselves, then we get a whole new destiny. Then all these different lessons that we're kind of preordained to learn may no longer apply, and we might get a whole new set of opportunities presented to ourselves. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I just learned something recently, which I feel called to share. We have three kinds of luck. So the first is the destined, or you call it heaven luck. The second type is the one that we create through our free will, through the mindset work, through the stepping out of the autopilot. That's called human luck. And then the third kind of luck is our earth luck, which is the environment, the country, the people we're around, the circumstances that arise for us. So when we have all these three parts at play, it becomes easier to determine, or not even determine, but easier to see it as, okay, I'm in control, but also there's some factors that are not in my control. And there's some stuff that I've signed up to deal with. And whenever you speak to the idea that we're preordained, it's so conflicting, because so many spiritual teachers will give you this idea that it's all a stage. We're just actors. Just go with the role, play along. And then there's some people that will just be like, no, the universe is chaotic. There's no such thing as destiny. There's no such thing as this was meant to be. It's too dynamic. I don't want to pick one side or the other, because I feel like we're human beings. We know very little of the actual picture. But it is an invitation to play with both spectrums, right? There have been moments, I wanted to share a story here at this juncture, where I wanted to get married, but I lived in India and I did not want to move out of India to be with anyone. So at the time, a person came into my life who lived in Canada, and I was very clear I'm not going to move. So it wasn't possible for us to get married. However, my life started tumbling down, and I experienced something called the dark night of the soul again. So I was already on the spiritual awakening journey, and I was already doing all of the work. And yet something shifted, and it felt like the universe had blocked me out. And until I agreed to meet this person and kind of have a coffee with him, things were just weird and depressing, and were like really pushing me to meet him. And 3 years later today, we're married. We're happily married. And life has transformed. Thank you. In those moments, I do highly believe that the universe not just guides us, but almost pushes us to complete the soul contracts that we have. Now, there's one aspect where we talk about relationships that aren't working. You call them dysfunctional. Are you doomed? Are you meant to be with that person forever? Probably not. A lot of spiritual seekers will notice that the relationships aren't stable. It's because they keep evolving from them too fast. You keep learning the lesson so fast that you move on, and sometimes the partner can't keep up, right? So there's nothing to worry about. We're all here to kind of complement each other's journeys. It's all beautifully designed. We can't comprehend the level of complexity that's in the design. However, yes, soul contracts are very much real. They can be evolved from, and you can come into very stable ones, which is key. I think a lot of people that search for soul contracts have two angles. One is that they are searching because they're stuck with this person and they want some kind of answer. Like, what's the lesson in this? How do I get rid of this person from my life? And then the second type is that they really believe this person is it for them, like a twin flame or like whatever you want to call it. Even for them, these are all just for our guidance, for our spiritual evolution.
Mm. Now, you mentioned the term twin flame, and I'd love to get your definition of twin flame and to compare that with a soulmate. Those terms can be used interchangeably by some people, but they're not the same.
Absolutely. Very few people know this, that my journey began through exploring twin flames. I believed that that's what I was going through at the time. And I don't speak about that story because it was very confusing to me. But how I see twin flames are just someone that comes to our life that might support us in our awakening and accelerate that for us. In a way where, yes, you feel romantically attracted to them, but there's something deeper. A lot of people see mirrors with that person. So they'll notice the universe giving a lot of synchronicities as soon as that person is in their life. Things might become smoother or more beautiful and more romanticized. I don't want to downplay the experience because I've been very deeply involved in twin flame healing. But at the end of the day, everything comes back to inner union. The person that you're so attracted to will also trigger you the most. And twin flame journeys can be deeply painful and deeply scarring for so many people. And yet, it's such a beautiful opportunity to wake up and just experience your journey through a different angle.
Yeah. I'm feeling called to share a definition of soulmate that I learned about from Anne Marie Pizarro, who was a guest on this podcast last year, and she's an Akashic Records reader, amazing one. And I'm in her training program right now on Akashic Records reading. But this is the definition that she shared in an email a few years ago. This is from Edgar Casey, who was incredible clairvoyant, very, very gifted, very prophetic back 80, 100 years ago. A soulmate is an ongoing connection with another individual that the soul picks up again in various times and places over lifetimes. We are attracted to another person at a soul level, not because that person is our unique complement, but because by being with that individual, we are somehow provided with an impetus to become whole ourselves.
Stunning.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And it's so important. And so sometimes we're connected up with our soulmate because of the soul contract that we and together agreed upon before incarnating, and that soul contract may be fulfilled and complete before the lifetime ends, and then you move on to another partner or another situation. And yet you can't deny the power and the value of that relationship for what it did for you, to wake you up, to get you to embody whatever behaviors that you needed to embody to become your best self, to switch versions, to elevate whatever needed to happen, and that brought you there. So my understanding of a twin flame is that it's essentially the soul has split in two, or even multiple components beyond even two, and that that fragment of the soul is in one person, and then that fragment of the soul in another person may meet through synchronicity, through heaven luck, right? That was preordained, and that brings about a powerful relationship. Doesn't have to be a marriage. It doesn't have to be an intimate relationship, but it could be business partners or lifelong friends or whatever. And I'm curious to hear if you have any examples of twin flame stories of folks who were probably kind of different fragments, soul fragments of the same soul.
Before we go into the examples, one thing that I really want to almost challenge very lovingly is
Yeah.
this idea that we're a soul split
Okay.
into two souls. There is so much of romanticism in that, and it sounds wonderful. And the whole idea of a soul is that it is one with the universe. So let's say that there's just one giant soul and we're all fragments of it. Now you can go on splitting those into multiple fragments and calling it whatever you want to, but at the end of the day, we're all from this giant soul, only to realize that for ourselves and go back to it. So if we were to be very, very cheesy, I would say that God is our true twin flame.
Gotcha.
You know, the universe, the higher power, whatever we want to call it.
Hmm.
Because I want to challenge this because we tend to put the other person on a pedestal. We will justify the most obnoxious behaviors from this person just because we think they're our twin flame. We are being called forward to step into our light, into our power. And that does not come from putting the other person on a pedestal, whoever they may be for us.
Right.
You know, we challenge faith, we challenge God. You know, the word God could be triggering for some people, whatever you want to call it, right? But how many times do you just blindly believe that God is going to protect you? You don't. Then why do you believe that this twin flame is going to be the one ride on a horse and come save you from all the problems? It's beautiful, but it's not empowering, right? There have been beautiful, powerful couples that, like you asked for as an example, I think I've never really tried to see another couple as a twin flame or not, because the moment I was introduced to the label, it just became very egoistic. Any label that we put is a construct of the ego mind. And I just couldn't do that for myself. I just didn't want to have that experience and think, oh, that's a great couple, they're twin flames. Oh no, those are not good couples because they're karmic. I wanted to free myself and the people around me from that. So I'm sorry I don't have an example and I'm kind of like challenging the whole notion.
Okay.
But that's how I've come to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. And my understanding, and I'm very early in this process here in my spiritual awakening, I would think of myself more as a toddler than an adult. But the idea of us being cells of source, of what another spiritual teacher took a Akashic Records course from in the spring, Christina Cross explains as we're all scoops of God, like a big vat of ice cream, your favorite ice cream, right?
I love that.
And we're each a scoop of God, and it's really important to see the spark of God in every one of us because we're all equally important. And I know that sounds good and sounds true, but when you actually embody that, when the rubber meets the road, you actually see somebody who's being rude to you or disrespectful or even hateful, and you see God in them. That's when you know you've really embodied that concept, and it's not just an intellectual exercise or an intellectual concept of, oh yeah, God is in every one of us. So I'm curious to maybe let's go in the direction of examining free will, and free choice is not so much just making decision to turn right instead of left or whatever, because that could be preordained too. Like you think that you're doing something spontaneous, but you were actually prompted to do that spontaneous thing and do exactly the thing that would get you that synchronistic um, uh, meeting or interaction that was meant to happen. So, what I learned in Kabbalah is that free will is in the space between the moments. It's in your attention. It's in, like, if you think of most things as predetermined, who you're going to meet, the jobs you're going to do, and all that, unless, of course, you jump timelines because you do something completely out of character. And even trying to be out of character is in character, which is little kind of a mind trip. But if you think of just those moments where you pay your attention to. For example, I was doing a breathing exercise a few hours ago outside, and in the backyard. There's a lake, the Enchanted Lake, that we're on in the backyard. It's really beautiful, and there's lots of waterfowl, all these different kinds of ducks, geese, and mud hens, and whatever else. And I was just really in a beautiful place, and my attention was drawn to a particular little lizard, and I felt this connection to that lizard, and I don't know. It was a powerful experience for me, and it was about where I put my attention in those moments, rather than the fact that, okay, today I'm finally going to do a Wim Hof breathing exercise that I didn't do for the last 5 or 6 days. I'm going to actually do it today, because that probably was preordained. and yet I don't know. I think maybe the experience with the lizard maybe wasn't, but who knows? It could all be preordained. This whole thing could be just a elaborate movie, and but I do feel like I am the director of that movie. So that's where I don't know. That's the paradigm shift to take, is to feel like this isn't just me going through the motions, but I am the director of my movie. This is not just life happens for me, not to me, but that next level, that life happens by me and not just for me. So what are your thoughts on all that?
That is profound. I would almost ask you to repeat that last bit. Life is
so I do have to
happening.
give credit to Neil Cannon, who runs these Wim Hof breathing groups every day. I'm in a men's group online called Metal, and he's the one who gave me that distinction of life not just happening for you but by you, because that's another level. And when I hear stuff, certain things just pop for me. It's like you'll see an angel number, which maybe we should talk about too, like an angel number, and the number just pops off the screen or off the page if it's in a book, or on a road sign or whatever, or somebody mentions it, or it's on the side of a cab or something. It pops. And when I hear stuff that pops, I know that was meant for me. So that was something that I'm like, okay, that is a message for me. I'm not going to forget that one. So yeah, do credit to Neil Cannon. I don't know where he got that, but the original piece of it, the first part, life happens for you, not to you, I heard that years ago from Tony Robbins. And I don't know if that's originally from him or from somebody else.
I guess it doesn't even matter where it's from. It's just so beautiful that it's worth just having a ripple effect and reaching everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's beautifully said, and that is the power of choice. For instance, we believe that we have to be in that relationship and listen to those arguments, or that we have to be in that job. But what was transformational for me was understanding there's a choice to stay here, do the rat race. There's nothing wrong with it. But what if I just muster a little bit of courage and go out there and be a little bit more, believe in that calling, right? When we all say that we have a higher calling, it automatically gives you that kind of strength to make those choices for yourself. But if you want to be limited to the human experience, then it's almost as if, okay, you're doing whatever you want to do. The autopilot doesn't seem like a big deal. But just discussing conversations like soul contracts, it automatically induced a sense of detachment for me and for so many people, because then you're like, oh, I don't have to take this relationship so personally. I don't have to take my life so personally. The pain that I'm going through can be elevated. and perhaps some people call it growing pains, which is my favorite term, is that pain doesn't mean that it's the wrong way to go. It could just be growth, and growth is very uncomfortable.
Right. And let's go into this idea that some things are synchronistic, and you mentioned those three different types of luck. So one thing I've started doing is I've stopped using the term luck, and I've used the
Mm-hmm.
term fortune instead. So that was very fortunate, or that was good fortune
Mm-hmm.
that that happened, because I don't believe that anything is random. I mean, what's been revealed to me is that nothing is random, and that blew my mind. And it took a while for me to really take that on board. That something like a random number generator isn't random. Well, actually, it's not, and this is scientifically proven. I learned this from Dr. Joe Dispenza, that there have been studies where they took people influencing, they were able to document this. People were influencing the random number generators, and it was statistically significant. It wasn't enough to make a huge difference, but it was enough that it was measurable. And they were able to repeat this time and time again. So scientific evidence has to be repeatable. It was repeatable. It was measurable, and yeah, predictable in that they were able to cause that effect over and over and over again. It was really amazing. So if nothing is random, where then synchronicities come into play is that they're divine intervention. They're divine assists, helping us to get to the next stage in our path, in this life path that we have, this game that we're in. And I'm curious if you have any examples that you'd like to share of that.
Oh, I love talking about synchronicities. My journey first started when I saw 11:11 on the clock, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I was sharing, I was kind of in this dark night of the soul situation. I look at that number and I'm almost thinking, oh, the Americans call this like a lucky number. If you make a wish, your wish comes true. And I'm like, what are the odds? Let's just try. So later in the evening, I don't even remember what the wish was, probably for some kind of help or healing or surrendering to the universe. Later in the evening, I'm reading some articles, and when I'm done, it's again 11:11 on the clock, and I freak out. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? It happened to be a website about twin flames that had been talking about swans. And I go outside into my own house, and mind you, this swan couple has been sitting there for like 10 years. I never bothered to really look at it. But that night, having read about swans, 11:11 on the clock, I go and see the synchronicity. And it blows my mind. And not just animals, but you think of a feather. Sometimes people call that something, a message from the spirit guides. You will hear a stranger walking by. They're just going to say the right words that you needed to hear to tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
This has happened to me, that a book has actually fallen out of my rack, and it's been the book I needed in the moment.
Yeah.
I think life is teaching us in every moment of our life, if we really wanted to take it on as a learning.
It's so
And these synchronicities are just
yeah. I love that example of a book just falling out of the bookshelf. That reminds me of a friend of mine. Once I started having these paranormal extrasensory experiences, he told me that, yeah, I had one where I was with a girlfriend at the time, and then we went into a CVS to find one of those flower wreaths that is plastic, fake flowers, but you put it in a grave site, and you stick it in the ground at a cemetery. And they didn't have any, and they didn't have time to stop and look at other places, and they were going to go and see this girlfriend's parent grave in a cemetery. But then they were thinking, oh, maybe we're not going to bother to do that. because we can't find the thing or whatever. And guess what falls off of the top shelf in the aisle at the CVS?
Wow.
Yep. In fact, I think it was like a whole bunch just fell off of those wreaths from the top shelf where they didn't spot them before. So this stuff is just, it's magical. And here's another fun example that just happened now, like just happened now. So you
Yeah.
shared 1111. So I just out of curiosity, I know a lot about Google, and I'm just like, I love Googling things. I have a book about Google called Google Power Search, how to find stuff on Google. So I Googled for twin flames swans. I'm curious about that article that you read. And rank number one is www.twinflames1111.com/blog.
I think that was the website.
Yeah. So there are no coincidences. There really aren't. And when you see whether it's 1111 or 111 or 333 or 444 or whatever, it means something. And it's not just to get your attention. There is information packed in there, and then you're meant to do something. Like, this isn't just, hey, we're here, good job. It's an invitation to up your level and maybe receive entire downloads and things like that. So I have a friend who has been getting 333 for well over a decade, and his wife as well. In fact, she gets more 333s than he does, but they're everywhere all the time. And I didn't even know last year what an angel number was. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I was, like I said, I'm a toddler at this stuff, so I'm just learning. And I'm curious, where do you go for the unpacking of the information in those angel numbers? Do you go to a particular angel number book? Do you just Google it? Like, how do you know that 1111 means, for example, that your loved ones are there watching over you and assisting you?
Yeah. I want to just acknowledge how much you've probably learned in the past 1 year or so, before I even talk about it, because it's just profound to hear you saying some really deep things and quoting all these wonderful people. It feels like you've embodied and internalized a lot of the truth that we set out to seek for ourselves in the beginning. I don't think you're a toddler. I think you're very much immersed in the path. And I've had this funny love-hate relationship with angel numbers. At the time, I got crazy to the point where I would just keep reading like car plates and billboards and just tracking every single number. I would go home, write it on my phone. I would send myself emails every day with like 30, 40 numbers, interpretations. It was it was excessive. I have had some conclusions, and I've written an article about this as well, about angel numbers. However, I don't believe that we really need to go too extensive in looking for a number and its meaning. You can if you want to. However, I believe that every person has a very personal relationship with their angel numbers. So for some people, 666 can trigger them because it's like, ooh, it's the devil's number. However, it could actually mean something very different to another person who was, let's say, born on 6th of June. It could, for him or her, be a reminder of their birthday. To the same effect, when you see the number 32, this is a very common example I love giving. 32 to me just reminds me of teeth. I look at it and I see smile. Now, if someone wants to go deeper onto that, they might interpret 3 separately, 2 separately. This is what it means when they're combined together. You're welcome to play around with it. However, we're not computers. We're not here to decode the codes that are given to us. After one point, I do believe that they are an invitation for us to pause, know something is aligning, and go ahead in that moment ask for more guidance. What does this number mean for me? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to do anything? Have an open-ended conversation with the universe versus driving ourselves nuts. So I have to share this. My synchronicity currently, which I haven't decoded, is I keep seeing the word diamond everywhere. So I have a book called The Diamond Book by A.H. Almas, and I have someone teaching me feng shui. Her last name is Diamond. I'm like, okay, I'm already doing all the diamond stuff. What is it, universe? What do you want me to do? But, you can't drive yourself crazy. You have to keep moving forward and asking questions.
Well, one of my favorite books is The Diamond Age, a young lady's illustrated primer. And it is a novel, which I don't normally read. That book I learned about because one of the most successful people in Silicon Valley shared that was his favorite book. This is it wasn't Tom Draper. It was Steve Jurvetson. Yeah, Steve Jurvetson of Draper, Jurvetson Fisher, the famed VC firm. So very, very rich billionaire, very cool guy. And he shared that book, and I loved it. And so maybe that is something to look into. I don't know.
I will look into it.
Yeah. Now, I find that I can relate to like going down these rabbit holes and like, oh my goodness, everything's a message. And then
Yeah.
I relax into it and I realize that the ones that are meant for me are going to pop. They're going to like jump off the page or the screen or out of the conversation. It'll be what just is memorable or most impactful. And then I don't get bogged down with a lot of noise or too much information. I don't want to get information overload or overwhelm. So I just relax into it and know that if I miss one, it's going to be presented to me again because it's important that I get it. So, and that tends to work. And I also recognize something else that when I was searching on Google for these meanings, like I'd search 333 angel number or 333 angel number meaning or 333 meaning or something like that, I would just see what popped as far as on that search result. Sometimes it would be an image in the one box that I would want to click on. It would be the first regular search result. It would be the third one, or it'd be just, I'd feel like I'm being guided, or somehow the angels know where I'm going to go to decode the answer or to decode the meaning. Because we're like we're on this timeline. We think that time is real, but it's actually an illusion. And the angels and the ascended beings and masters and our loved ones who have passed, they're all kind of in the middle of this track, and the track goes around them, and that track is called time. And there's past, present, and future, and we think that it's linear, but it's not. So they can see the probable future or futures ahead of us because they can look ahead in the track before we get there. They can see the present moment where we're at now, and they could see in the past what was on the track before. So if we can just relax into this and know that they're seeing where we're heading, that we're going to spontaneously turn right today. Like, oh, okay, that's good because you're supposed to. Or you're going to pull out that Angel Numbers 101 book by Doreen Virtue because that's been the book you've been leaning on to get the meanings lately instead of going online and searching Google. And so they're going to give me an angel number that has a meaning that correlates to what they're trying to convey from that book. Or a book falls out of the bookshelf, or a book that you feel like I should pick that up and then just randomly open it. And it's not random. And it takes you exactly to the spot that you need to be. And then you read exactly the thing that you need to hear. Yeah, this stuff is, it feels more, I don't know, it's easier on me knowing that they see the future. They can see that, oh, he's going to go to that particular book to get the meaning, or he's going to pick that book up that fell off the bookshelf, and that's exactly what he's supposed to do. And that's going to lead them to the next thing. It's kind of like a treasure hunt.
It is, and it's so fascinating the way they just catch our attention. I've had this happen so many times where I'm searching for something in the grocery store, and I'll just suddenly look back and my eyes land exactly on that product that I've been searching for like 10 minutes to find. So I think there's divine intervention every moment, very subtly. And like you said, it's not even the moments, it's just through and through on the track every single moment. But one important thing I wanted to share is that we believe sometimes when we see these synchronicities, something is going to happen and it doesn't. These are just speculations of the possibility. Like you shared, they can look into the future and tell us what's coming up for us. You might think, oh, money is coming, health is coming, the partner is coming, and it doesn't. Is there anything wrong? Was the universe lying? No. This is one thing I had to really overcome because it's a very dynamic universe. Our choices, people involved, their choices, the events, the three kinds of luck or the fortune that we were talking about earlier, there's so much factoring in. Whatever information is being available to us may or may not happen. And how do we want to work with it is to not get frustrated, but to just understand that there's some significance. There is some alignment there. Whether we get to receive it or not, it's just such a blessing to have angel numbers and to have this dialogue with the universe to begin with. And the second piece that I feel called to share is sometimes you will feel like you're alone on the path, like no one is there to guide you. You're feeling very low vibration, as some people call it. It's difficult for someone to communicate with us when we're so self-isolating. For instance, if you shut off your phone, you lock your doors, you close your windows, would it be easy for someone to come and talk to you? No. Then in the same capacity, if you're crying, you're wailing, you're venting, you're becoming a victim in your mind, do you think it's going to be easy for the angels to communicate with you? No. We are required to kind of come to this neutral space, to this elevated space where we can receive the guidance. So it's not that the rich get richer, spiritually speaking. It's not that you have to be very happy in order to get happier. But it is true that you need to have some elevation, some belief, some surrender in that moment before the guidance can come to you, because it presses on this idea that it's divine intervention and not divine interference. The universe isn't going to interfere in your life. It's going to come up for you when you ask it to come, when you're open to receiving.
Right. And the it's all in the asking, right? So if you don't ask because you've cut yourself off and you believe that nothing is sacred, nothing is divinely inspired, that we don't even live in a friendly universe, that it's a chaotic and dark universe, you create that reality for yourself. One, because of the power of co-creation. It's one of our big gifts, right up there with free will, is the power to co-create with the creator. But also it's because we've shut ourselves off to the listening, to the reception, like tuning in to that channel that is the angelic channel. And so we can receive the intuitive hits, we can receive the telepathy, the remote viewing, the paranormal stuff, which isn't paranormal, it's normal. It's part of our birthright to have this kind of psychic ability that for many cost them their lives in past lifetimes because of witch hunts and superstition and all that. But now people are seeing that they're getting these kinds of synchronicities, they're getting these kinds of messages, and a way to boost that signal is, as you said, to raise your vibration, be more in a receptive place for it. And also to I learned this distinction from Kabbalah just 6 months ago in a synchronistic event that happened that like I was switching SIM cards in my iPhone, and it just flew out of my hand, the SIM card, onto the floor. And as I was bending over and going to pick it up, and then I look up to the phone, and it's at that exact moment that a particular message came through, because I had just swapped in my US SIM card. I was abroad, and that was one out of probably 30 messages that came in. That one caught my eye because of me looking up at that moment with the SIM card in my hand. And it was a 1 minute verbal message, a Kabbalah, 1 minute of wisdom, about the power of receiving messages being boosted by maintaining purity of thought. And so I used to think that thoughts were private. That is so far from the truth. Every thought is on display, not just for the angelic realm, but people who have telepathic abilities and like people can read your minds. People can read our minds. It's pretty wild. And once I recognized that, I started being more careful with my thinking and maintaining that purity. But to hear that message, I got super disciplined about maintaining that purity of thought, because not only in Kabbalah do they say that maintaining purity of thought, word, and deed all simultaneously creates powerful, positive angels. You can actually create angels this way who can help guide you. But also, it massively boosts the signal. So you're able to receive a lot more psychically by maintaining that purity of thought. It's really, really cool. And it works. It absolutely works.
It's fascinating.
I'm curious, have you had any kind of psychic phenomenon? Have you received any messages, kind of without a doubt, kind of messages from above, more than just seeing certain numbers or certain words?
Yeah. There was a phase where I was really, really deep into meditation, and I would meditate for hours after work. And I started receiving insights from the God that I believe in. I would just get this information about the way energy moves, the way our healing is created, the way soul contracts are designed. That was just so grounding. And it was a kind of knowing that doesn't really need any kind of validation. It doesn't need for me to question it. It's just information that's present, and you know it deep down in your roots for this to be true. So many times through dreams, so many times in meditation, you will get through the third eye, you will see something. So I guess you call it clairvoyant. I started tapping into my own life, and I knew certain events to be true, to be unfolding. However, what happened is my timelines got messed up when I started using my psychic senses on myself. And I started getting very angry and very frustrated because things were not unfolding the way I was told they would. So I think psychic senses are powerful, and they're not the only way that we get to access the higher realms. They're available to all of us, but yet we have to be very careful in how we use them and what their intention is.
Yep.
So I'm even curious, like, if you've had an event where you've used the psychic sense for yourself and you've like been, no, that should not have been done. I should have been more careful.
Oh, well, there are definitely times where I had my energy drained because I got involved doing a healing that I didn't protect myself enough, didn't put myself behind the crystal wall the whole time, or I didn't. Yeah. So when you're doing work to get rid of negative entities and stuff, you have to be very, very vigilant and careful. And I was a little too observant. I just want to get in there in the action and watch the archangels do their work, and through my third eye, the internal visor where you imagine stuff. is the same place where the visions are given. So anyways, yeah, that was a little lesson for me to be more cautious, but it's not dissuading me from helping others, to assisting others in their healing if they've got some sort of entity that's feeding off of them or whatever. And this might sound like nonsense to some people, but I'm guessing the people who are listening to this entire episode are more open to this kind of possibility. I'm learning from one of the best medical intuitives on the planet, Tina Zion, and so it's a safe space. She's guiding me through this process. I'm learning how to call in divine and sacred beings, how to do these healings where I'm not the one getting my hands in there doing stuff, but I'm just asking for the assistance. And then whoever shows up, the specialists, because I ask for divine and sacred beings who specialize in the particular person and their malady or disease that they are experiencing. And yeah, might be Raphael who shows up. It depends. It depends on what the situation is. But it's really cool. It's really, really cool.
It's so cool.
So I know we're out of time here. So I'm wondering if you had one nugget of wisdom to share that you haven't already shared in like a minute or less, what would it be?
I'm closing my eyes to really tune into if there's any insight that the universe has for everyone. There are insights available to every single one of us at the level that we can perceive them. All we have to do is open our mind's eye to the message. I think that's what came forward. And it was a pleasure to be here and to have these meaningful conversations with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. And thank you, listener, for being open-minded and receptive to these kinds of messages. There is incredible abundance and many blessings awaiting you. Just open your heart and let the magic happen. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.